So this is a continuation of the dismantling of the power steering rack, and this is the rack shaft. I've just got it wrapped up in a towel, and there's a special O-ring. It's not actually an O-ring, it's some sort of seal, and I've got one of those, so I have to take this off. There's a circlip. What people do is they don't want to scratch this, so they put foil on this and then drag that circlip off. You take this thing off, and as I mentioned, there is a PTFE ring that can be replaced, so I may look into that. And then you need to take this one off also, because this thing, this cylinder, needs to go back on this side, and then you put this back on. Now you can't, or I wouldn't recommend putting the cylinder in, sorry about that, on this side, because as I said, you may damage the seal. Sorry, I wouldn't recommend pushing this cylinder in from this way, because you'll damage the seal. And also this is, I think, machined to 1 1/8 of an inch, and then there's an edge there. I sort of pointed that out earlier in the thing. And so I'm going to take this out. I'm actually going to take it to an O-ring shop and see if they can advise me what to do. If I need that special, it's a special seal. Actually, do I have a, I may have one that looks similar. It's a similar seal to the one that goes in the control valve. So it's not actually a complete O-ring, but I'm going to go to my shop and see if an O-ring will do. Seems like it should do. And then go from there. So as I said, I found this for about, those 5 of them for like $5, and they're from Granger in USA. So about the $7 for 5 of them, and they're pressurized up to 500 psi. So I'm going to take a gamble. As I said, I'm okay taking the rack apart. So I put it in there, and I actually put it on the rack. There's some special O-ring grease on that. It doesn't seem to collapse, even though it is a lot thinner. And it seems to move okay inside there, and that ring doesn't come off. So I'm going to take a chance, and if it leaks in a year, I'll let you know. My other one, which I used the proper seals, lasted 20 years and is due for another rebuild. But here's my problem. I've got so many leftover seals. I don't change those. I don't feel that they go wrong. I've had other kits before, and the reason why I've had to buy other kits is because this seal gets damaged, and then you have to buy the whole kit just to find this. But you know, these are the standard dimensions. I can post them later, and there are different ones available. But as I said, in my case, I have so many leftover seals that I can use, because I got both types of racks. I got the later control valve and the earlier one. But then, you know, I like to try and save money, and in the end I think it's just best to get the kit and just so you can sleep over it. But yeah, I'm more experimenting, enjoy trying different things. So I'm gonna go for it, and you know, if it lasts a year, I'll be happy. We'll go from there. Okay, so I'm going to put the O-rings on this, and again I bought some O-rings from my shop, just separate O-rings. These whole load of O-rings were like $6. One goes on the shaft, this one goes on the tube, and these ones here go on the cylinder. They're like 30 cents a piece. Not a bad price. And here's the actual kit that I bought, just to compare. That was like $25. I do need the gasket. I'm not going to admit that I don't need it, but if you need to send it out, then if you're going to do a rebuild, yeah, you can. If you have more than, you know, a couple of stags, then you can save a bit of money. So as I said, I found this for about those 5 of them for like $5, and they're from Granger in USA. So about the $7 for 5 of them, and they're pressurized up to 500 psi. So I'm going to take a gamble. As I said, I'm okay taking the rack apart. So I put it in there, and I actually put it on the rack. There's some special O-ring grease on that. It doesn't seem to collapse, even though it is a lot thinner. And it seems to move okay inside there, and that ring doesn't come off. So I'm going to take a chance, and if it leaks in a year, I'll let you know. My other one, which I used the proper seals, lasted 20 years and is due for another rebuild. But here's my problem. I've got so many leftover seals. I don't change those. I don't feel that they go wrong. I've had other kits before, and the reason why I've had to buy other kits is because this seal gets damaged, and then you have to buy the whole kit just to find this. But you know, these are the standard dimensions. I can post them later, and there are different ones available. But as I said, in my case, I have so many leftover seals that I can use because I got both types of racks. I got the later control valve and the earlier one. But then, you know, I like to try and save money, and in the end I think it's just best to get the kit and just so you can sleep over it. But yeah, I'm more experimenting, enjoy trying different things. So I'm gonna go for it, and you know, if it lasts a year, I'll be happy. We'll go from there. Okay, so I'm gonna put the O-rings on this, and again I bought some O-rings from a shop, just separate O-rings. These whole load of O-rings were like $6. One goes on the shaft. This one goes on the tube. And these ones here go on the cylinder. They're like 30 cents a piece. Not a bad price. And here's the actual kit that I bought, just to compare. That was like $25. I do need the gasket. I'm not going to admit that I don't need it, but if you need to send it out, then if you're going to do a rebuild, yeah, you can. If you have more than, you know, a couple of stags, then you can save a bit of money. Okay, so this is the thing that goes on the rack shaft. 2 circlips and an O-ring, and as I said, this is the earlier one has a metal like a piston ring type of thing on there, and then the kit actually has one of these. But I'm going to go ahead and leave it on there. Seems okay. I'm not going to bother, so I'll go ahead and put that on the sleeve. I put this on, as you can see. Seems to go relatively okay. I'm going to take that chance and see how it goes. I'll report back. Okay, so I put this on. As I said, I'm going to go ahead and leave this on there. It seems to be okay. Circlips are on there. And now, this is the critical thing. I'm going to slide the rack shaft inside the tube. And as I mentioned, this thing, as you slide it in, you want to be close to this opening as possible. Because if it's like this, and you slide it in, there is no way in hell you're going to be able to rotate it. So as I said, rotate it upright. Have a datum. I like to keep the rack teeth straight up. This way, and I'm going to go ahead and slide it in the tube, and then this thing will, I need to push that in. As I said, it's a little like a piston ring. I need to compress that with my fingers and then slide that in and then put it in the shaft. So let's go ahead and do that. So there you can see a little bit of the O-ring. It's popping its head through. Now you want to be super careful at this point that you don't whack it too far. otherwise you'll have to pull the whole thing out and you could damage the seal on that. And I think maybe once I did that and I had to pull the whole thing out and I had to buy another kit just for that one seal. So that's why I've been trying to look for those seals if I can find it. And that's the main reason. Because the other ones is pretty straightforward, but this is the one that's you've got to be careful about. So now I'm getting close to the threaded part of it. As you can see, it's lined up pretty well. And now I've got to be super careful that I don't push it too far in. So we'll go from there. Something I forgot to mention as I was putting it in, that I put in some ATF brake fluid just so it slides in a lot easier. So you don't want to put a dry O-ring on that, so put some fluid on it. So that lined up well. I was able to put this on there. It's a bit loose. Now this is, again, you want to be super careful. The rack shaft can slide out at this point. And so what I'm going to do next is put in the control valve. And the last time, as I mentioned, what happened was I started putting it together, the rack shaft slipped out, and I think that ruined the seal. I had to get another seal. Because I had to get another seal, I had to get another seal kit. And again, that's why I was looking for some seals just for that one. So that's why I'm trying that. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and put in the control valve. Now this is the earlier one. This isn't interesting. The book shows that this thing comes out, but there's no way in hell I can get that out without damaging it. So there may be an O-ring on the outside, but as I said, I don't have the tools to pull that out. I did try and remove a little bit of marring with a screwdriver. If I can get that out, that'd be great. But I'm going to go ahead and put some seals in there. There's actually a couple of seals in the kit, and I've had some seals from an earlier kit. They go in there. So one goes in there, and as I mentioned earlier, in the earlier AdWest, the bearing actually gets lubricated by the ATF fluid. So it's very important to get this one changed. And what was happening on this rack, it was leaking overnight, so I'm assuming that this bearing was this seal down there was leaking because all the fluid was just going out through the bellows. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this up and put in the control valve. Okay, so I was going to put the control valve in, but I thought let me just put this end thing on, end cap. Now this is, don't forget to put this ring on there, and then this little ring that goes over. You want to be careful that when you put this ring on there, so it's in a groove, that you don't scratch this too much, because you're going to put an O-ring in the end of this, and then don't forget the seal, which goes right in there. And again, I'm going to take my luck in trying this one and see if it works for a year. I'll be all set. So I'll get that bit done. After I do that, I'll put the control valve in. So I've got the end done, changed the O-ring. I'm going to put some anti-seize compound on this because I didn't protect it from rust, so next time when I take it off I want to make sure it comes off. So as I said, I'm going to put some of this compound on there just to stop it corroding. So I've got an O-ring in there, a seal I should say, not an O-ring, and there's a seal in here as well. This one was a bit difficult to get in, but there's two seals that go on there, and they're both the same seals that go in. Now as I mentioned, the earlier rack, the bearing is lubricated by the ATF fluid, so it's important to make sure you put this gasket back on. And I'm going to use a bit of gasket maker, because every time I put a gasket dry they tend to leak. So as I said, this is very critical in this earlier control unit, because as I said, the fluid, the bearing gets lubricated by the fluid. I'd actually dry fitted it in. I put some grease down. There's a bearing right at the bottom, so I just put some grease down there. So I'm going to seal this up and then put the control valve in. I used my famous British rally spanner to tighten that up. Put some anti-seize compound on that, should be okay. Left it a little loose because I'll have to adjust it a little bit, and then once I nip it up it will be tight. So let me get on with sealing this up a little bit. So what I noticed was when I put the control valve in, I was having a tough time getting this in. It nicked a little bit of the O-ring, as you can see there. I whacked it with a mallet and sort of deformed this. As you can see, it's a metal. It's made of metal, I think. It looks like it's metal lined, and it definitely got deformed. But fortunately, I've got a couple of spares. This is the early hardware, so I've got it from a spare kit. I'm going to put the control valve in and then push it in from the top. Hopefully, and this edge is pretty sharp, so I've got to figure out how to get it in. I'll have to do it. I'll put this control valve on top first, and then I'll feed this in from here and force it in. Hopefully, I'll try that. But yeah, you want to be careful that it can get damaged. So I had some trouble getting that top seal in. The old one was actually, this looks similar, but it was squished, I think, or squashed. So I put in some sort of aluminium tape on there, and I was able to get it in. Hopefully I haven't left any tape inside there. That's what I'm praying. And it's on. It went a lot easier, so let's see if that goes okay. So I finally got it in. So this was a really tough, difficult job to do, this top seal. And I put some foil, that didn't work. In the end I sort of pushed it in and pushed the shaft in from this side. Played around with it, got it in a few times the other way, and then just sort of put some grease on it. Some brake grease, and able to wiggle it in. This definitely went in a lot easier than the first one, which I had to use a mallet. So yeah, not the easiest job to do. So I wanted to point out on this control valve, there was rings that you can put in on the spool valve, on the valve. People say heat them up. As I said, I might have said this a couple of times, I don't really, if you got power steering is just leaking, these seem to rarely wear out. But you can put them in hot water, put them over a neck of a bottle, expand them, and then drop them in using a aluminium can or aluminum cam, and just slide them over. That's how I've seen some videos, not videos but some pictures, so you could try that. Okay, all the seals are in now, and what's involved is, just wanted to point this out, there's a little dimple right there, and what that is when you straighten the rack with your steering wheel, you actually, there's a hole there, you take the plug out, or the screw, and then you got to, don't forget we haven't put the other bits in there, but basically we've got to take care of this little bit of play. You can see there's a little bit of play there, put a bit of tension on that. Now I always eyeball it, and I know people do it with the dial gauge and what have you, but yeah, I'm no expert, I just try things for fun. So what you do is you actually put something down there, like a podger or whatever, and then you center your wheels accordingly, and you center your steering wheel according to this pointer, and hopefully if you get that more or less right, you can then just get the tracking done. Won't be that much, but yeah, that's something you want to keep an eye on. So is that, I just put a bit of grease in there. Don't forget there's a spring that goes inside there, and then you just put this on here. And as I said, people use a dial gauge to get rid of that play. I just sort of eyeball it. Okay, so now I put on the pipes. These two pipes I made, and actually I'm not the best of pipe makers. I got a pipe bender over there, seems to work okay. It maybe, you know, these are about £40 each, so, or a set. So yeah, I got a tool, quite a fancy tool, so I thought I'll make them myself. Maybe I should get in the business of doing steering racks. Anyway, so I've got a little test set up that I'm gonna at least check it for pressure leaking. You actually need to get it on the car to actually run the thing, because it needs a bit of friction in that torsion bar. But if I can run it on my test bench that I've got, and so it doesn't leak, then hopefully I'll put the tie rods on tomorrow. You know, make sure you put these things on there, these tabs over there. You can reuse the old ones maybe once or twice, and put in the bellows, the gaiters, bellows, and then clamp them up. But as I said, I'm going to test it before I clamp everything up for sure. Okay, so it's December 30th 2020. It's continuation of yesterday's rebuild. So yesterday I changed to pipes, and I actually put it on my test rig, and the test rig is really just the power steering pump mounted on a frame, and then I hooked it up to the rack. Now I just wanted to check for any leaks. The problem was one of the pipes I'd made, so over on the other side, bottomed out here, and it was leaking. I nipped it up as much as possible, but it was bottoming out. So then I tried making another pipe, but I think the fitting's not good. I don't have any spare fittings, so in the end I used this pipe. Now this pipe is actually slightly too short. It actually went with for the other leader valve, and the leader valve is shorter, so it sits sort of closer to here. But I did, when I was testing this initially, I used the same one, and there's enough room under there to get that one, so I didn't want to change it. I've run out of fittings. I'm not gonna, maybe in the next time I'll prepare and get some fittings for it. So now what we're going to do is, what I'm going to do, sorry, I need to put the tie rod ends on. First thing that goes on is this stop. Then we put this tab washer on there, and it goes one way. Don't forget there's a little spring that goes in, and I'm going to go ahead and grease it. And this little thing goes on the end, and then you put the tie rod on. Now I didn't separate this tie rod. There's no play that I can see of. I'm just going to put grease in there and just grease it up. But there are shims in there, and you can get cups if you needed to. They're all available for you. So let's go ahead and put that in, and then we'll report back. I'll probably do the other side as well at the same time. Okay, both tie rod ends are on, and they're all pinned over. All that's left is to put the boots on. The boots that came off are pretty okay, not ripped or anything, so I'm just going to go ahead and put them on. Yeah, I think some of the new quality stuff's equally probably fall apart before the old stuff, so I'll go ahead and put it on. And this is more or less the end of, well, not quite. Let me put them on and then we'll finish up. Okay, so this is the finished rack. Gaiters are on. As I said, I used the old ones, put some ties here, some wire, just used the original clips there. Same on this side, ready to put it in. So here's my takeaway. So since I'm in US and people are charging $400 or $500 or $500 to get your rack repaired, is it worth you doing it yourself? I'll do it again. I prefer to save that money and then, you know, do something else with the money I've saved on it. But if you're in UK, you can actually get these repaired for about £200. So maybe you know, probably be better off going to get it repaired by somebody else who has the expertise, and then you're guaranteed you'll get it back. And also pointed out, you know, the rack shaft, if that's scratched, you'll have to definitely have it looked at a shop. So yeah, all in all, was it worth it? A bit tiring. I'm just gonna pray it works, and I've got those cheaper seals in there that I'd mentioned, so if they last a year I'll be happy. But in the meantime, I'm going to look for proper seals and see if I can do that, because now I know what I need to change is just the rack seals mainly. You know, I had a little bit of a problem with this one here. Next time I may not even take that off, the other two. But you know, who knows? Let's see how it goes. So yeah, let me put it in the car and I'll give you an update. It'll be probably a day or so. Well, thanks for watching, and no need to subscribe. This is just a one-off project that I'm doing. Okay, thanks. Bye bye. Okay, so I'm installing the rack on a left-hand drive car. I have a high torque starter motor, and that sort of is more compact than the original Stag starter motor, so I get a bit more room here. Well, again, this is a left-hand drive Stag, and one thing I want to point out is there's a bracket or a clamp around the cross member. I took that off, and the reason why I took that off, well, I took the pipes out anyway, but the thing is, by taking that off, you can wiggle the pipes a little bit, and that helps you start threading the pipes on the rack itself. The rack's still loose, so there's a bit of movement. If you start clamping everything up and put the pipes, you're going to have a tough time putting the pipes in. So again, there's this Mark 1, there wasn't a bracket holding the pipes to the inner wing, and my latest Stag had that, so I put that on. But again, when you're putting the pipes on, it's good to just keep it all off. I actually had to take the rack off. That pipe that I used, that was the incorrect pipe, was actually very close to the engine, and it was actually touching the pan, and I didn't like that. So I took the rack out again, bent the pipe a little bit, and put the rack back onto the car with the help of my younger son, who put in the steering column intermediate shaft. So I'm going to nip this up, tighten all the bolts here. Now this is something interesting, and there's been some discussion about this bracket here, and some cars have one and some cars have two. Well, on this Stag, this is early 71, the bracket which the light is showing is actually got a slot in it. This bracket doesn't have a slot. Sorry about the light, but this bracket doesn't have a slot. I'll quickly pull this out. Let me show you. Since this doesn't have a slot, the rack can't move left or right, and it's anchored by this point. So basically what you have to do first is anchor these two down on this rack, and then go to the right hand side and then anchor this down and adjust this so it doesn't butts up against this thing here. But I have seen on other later Stags that this bracket on the left hand side has actually got slots as well. Now the advantage with the slots is you can move the rack slightly, and that helps with the control valve, especially on a left hand drive car, because that's damn tight, but it seems to be all in. So hopefully tomorrow I'll hook it up and fire it up. Okay, the rack's in. The power steering pump's pressurized and it's got fluid in it. And what I found out is that if the pump doesn't start actually pumping fluid until a certain amount of pressure is in there. So when you what I do is turn the engine over, you'll notice nothing will happen, then suddenly when the pressure builds up there'll be no fluid in there. So you want to maybe have two people, one's running the car and one keeping an eye on the reservoir level. So I already started the car, and you can't actually test the rack while it's up in the air in my case. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to make sure there was no leaks in the pipes. So I had to nip something up, and everything's okay. The other thing, a good sign, even though the way the steering rack works is a torsion bar, and that torsion bar, the wheels and tires have to be on the ground, and then you turn the wheels one way full and one way the other. Now what I noticed, I don't know if you noticed this, is when you turn while the car is in the air, if you turn the steering full lock one way or the other, you'll hear a funny sound coming from the power steering pump, and that's a good sign. That's at the extreme, because what's happening there, and you're at the end of the limit of the rack and you're flexing that torsion bar, and then you can, fluid can't go anywhere, but you can hear this little sound, and you turn it full lock the other way, and again you'll hear a difference in the sound that the power steering pump. So that's a good sign. Now basically we need to put the car on the ground and actually check it. So the way you need to bleed it, they say a few times, is turn the steering full lock when the wheels are on the ground one way, turn it on the other way for a few times. Hopefully that bleeds out the system. And while you're doing that, you may want to check the reservoir periodically. Now I had rebuilt this pump. You can buy a kit for about we're in America, you can buy it for about $10-12. It's a Saginaw pump. It's actually used by GM back in the 70s, I think. I actually got some help from a Corvette page. So they're slightly different. The canister is different, but the gut's more or less the same. And for $10-12 you can just get a new seal kit and put that in. The hardest thing to take off, I would say, is the pulley. But that can sometimes be a pain. And then there's a woodruff key on the shaft. Fortunately, you don't have to take that out. Look, some of the books say you take that out, but you don't. It slides out. But you want to be gentle when that slides out. And okay, so yeah, let's go test the car.